before we start, can you talk about your background a little bit? I'm really curious.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. So I'm like, I didn't really even introduce myself. I just was, talking with my back turned, and then it turns into this thing. So my name's Tim Ross, and I'm a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine. I got my doctoral degree from here a few years ago before they changed it to the first professional doctorate thing. So my doctorate was full-time, and it took me like 4 years to finish it. And my thesis was on quality comparison, or comparing the quality of TCM materials grown in their Daodi regions in China to the same materials grown here in the US. And so I looked at Scutellaria species, Scutellaria bicalensis and Scutellaria barbata. And Scutellaria barbata, Bonjulian, is not necessarily a specific Daodi region in China. It's grown in a lot of different places, whereas Huangqian Scutellaria bicalensis has a particular Daodi region, and we'll say it's in Gansu, but it's a little bit more diffuse than that. And so that was where I started. Before that, I did my master's degree. I did pre-med a long time ago, and then I was studying Chinese martial arts and philosophy and Chinese philosophy, and then after college, after doing pre-med, I went and I started teaching Chinese martial arts. And then after crippling myself doing Chinese martial arts, I started working for a man, Dr. Lin, and we were studying the physiological correlates of the qi phenomenon at University of California, Irvine. We brought in all these Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation masters, and I hooked them up with EKGs and EEGs and biophoton meters and all kinds of crazy stuff. And that was, I had this biomedical track, and I also had this Chinese martial arts track, and then working for Dr. Lin, I was able to incorporate my neuroscience and physiology stuff with my Chinese martial arts stuff, and that brought me into the internal martial arts, Qigong and Tai Chi, meditation. And then working with all these people, I'm like, hey, I should actually learn the philosophy and the medicine that's at the heart of these physical practices. So that brought me back into school. I did the master's program at Emperor's College in LA. At that time, I met Robert Newman. Robert Newman was the head of he was running the Learning Garden at Venice Beach High School. And Robert, at some point, was also the head of the Botanical Gardens in Nanjing. And so Robert is the head of the Newman Network, and the Newman Network is almost like the Campanulaceae family, where if like this was the Newman Network, coming out of the Newman Network, you have Kathy Riviere, Rich Ocek, Joe Hollis, Jean Giblet, and Peg Schaefer. And so all the material that Robert brought over from China, he spread it out amongst all the people that are recognized as the major Chinese herb growers in America at this point. So Robert's like the root of a lot of the Chinese medicinal material in the US. So Robert was my original mentor at the Learning Garden in LA. So I worked with him a lot, and that, and through that process, I did stuff like this down there when I was doing my master's program. We did like adopt a plant day stuff, and we just germinate a bunch of plants and then give them out to people that came to the garden for these events. That led to the desire to understand the material further, right? I'm like, okay, I walked around the garden watering it for a few years, and then I started collecting it, and then I started propagating it, and I started building other gardens and other sites, and then I started harvesting the material. And then after harvesting, I want to assay its quality because I'm using it, I'm observing that it looks way different than what I'm buying in Chinatown or what I'm getting through other suppliers. Maybe it tastes different, or I don't know when to harvest it or what to do after I harvest it. A lot of times when you harvest something, you don't know how to post-harvest process it. You totally screw it up then, and then it doesn't look anything like what you see on the market. And it's not because it was grown in the wrong place, it's because you processed it wrong after harvest. And so just along that natural path is how I ended up doing this type of study. And what you find is like none of that information is available in English. There's no information on post-harvest processing available in English. Most of the cultivation information isn't really available. When you're looking at things that are translated from the Chinese sources, it'll describe everything in terms of seasonal nodes, like you harvest this plant on this particular day, and you plant it on that particular day, and blah, blah, blah. So when I originally wrote my thesis, I was like, yeah, it'll be better if it's grown locally because it's like fresher and, local is better and these things. And that was half-truths. sort of true, sometimes true, you know, and frequently the material from China is better. So in my study, the Scutellaria bicalensis from China was superior to the Scutellaria bicalensis from California, and the difficulty in making any differentiation for that case was that the Scutellaria bicalensis from China was 3 years old, or 4 years old, and the Scutellaria bicalensis from California was 2 years old. And so the major difference in the material was cultivation length, and I can't say anything about growing region because the cultivation length wasn't standard. Beyond that, the germplasm wasn't standard, so there's a lot of problems in the research, but you can make this conclusion. And then you can extrapolate from that, and you understand Scutellaria bicalensis, it's like Lake Baikal, freezing winters. Freezing winters is significantly different than non-freezing winters, so the metabolite complexion is going to be different, and we start seeing the impact of climate upon the root. And then Scutellaria Bonjour-Leon, Scutellaria barbata, has no clear Dowdy region. It did much better, and it's an annual, and it's an herb, and it's not a root. And so it was actually possibly superior or equivalent to the material from China. And so you see these things where it's like, you know, if it's an herb, aerial part like the mints, you know, Lamiaceae is a mint, or Scutellaria is in the mint family, it's a mint, or even like Bova, Mentha haplocalis, Jingjae, the Schizonopeta, all these things, the mint things that are annuals maybe are a lot easier to get similar therapeutic fingerprints with, whereas when we start looking at roots that need to grow multiple years, the impact of the environment, and a lot of it has to do with mycorrhizal and rhizobacterial associations in the root, and how the communication between the bacteria and the fungus leads to the production of secondary metabolites, and the actual strains of bacteria and fungus is going to affect the production of the secondary metabolites. As that goes on for years, the roots are highly impacted that way. And so the Dowdy is something that impacts roots that are grown for multiple years more than aerial parts, more than herb parts. And so that kind of brings us to where we are now. That's why I'm like, I won't even answer this question. Every question you ask me, I'll probably take an hour to answer it.
So be aware.
I was going to say mycorrhizal bacteria is usually like, not bacteria, material. It's probably hard to import.
Yeah.
That's usually the stuff they don't want you bringing.
Exactly, yeah. I remember trying to smuggle Chinese herbs out of China, and it caught me. And then it was like I was like contaminated with radiation because they immediately put on all these fancy gear, and they like took my shoes because my shoes had mud on them, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're gonna like contaminate the whole country," and it was that exact thing anyway. Yeah, I mean, there's a way. You see the research at this point trying to look at it to discover which bacteria and which funguses are the most important to get the signature developmental pattern, and then you could ideally, hopefully, have inoculant for that somehow. But I mean, that's kind of part of the pie in the sky idea. But
having a rich mycorrhizal, whether it be the exact same or not, is going to be
But it's not going to produce the same.
not.
you need the climactic factors
No, I
in
know.
the soil, like the whole picture, right? It's
You're
sort
not
of
going to be
like-
absolutely there, but I mean, it will start to adapt here. I mean, you're going to give it a lot more.
It's helpful, but it's difficult because if the climate isn't there, the climate won't support the survival of those bacteria and fungus in the right populations and the right balance, and so then you'll just get something weird anyway.
I try to do that locally if I transport things from the woods to my yard, like I bring some of it.
Yeah,
Stuff with me.
yeah, me too. I mean, when I transplant stuff into pots, it's like I try to reproduce the same environment, and it's like with the soil, with the cohabitants, with the light, with the moisture, and as much as possible. And the plants actually really like it. So let's go harvest. Let's go harvest some potted codon.